Alright, test, test. Hope you guys can hear me. I was delayed because I couldn't get my camera to work, and it still doesn't work. But here we are. We're going to do puzzles. So let's see if we can solve this first one. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me, since I'm a little bit unsure at the moment. This puzzle is apparently black to play. I'm doing it on ChessBase.com. This is their tactics module. And if anyone wants to suggest a move, feel free. Case, thank you for confirming that you can hear me. Welcome. And I saw your question earlier about why does teaching make someone rusty. I think it's not guaranteed to make someone rusty, but when you have to simultaneously think about what it's like to be the beginner who just learned how to move the knight, and also think about how we're supposed to beat the grandmaster across the board, it's a little bit of a tricky scenario. So it's good to spend a lot more time on your own chess in order to offset the tendency to simplify things too much as a coach. I really wish I was able to get my camera working. Let me see if I can fix it again. Oh well. I guess it will be a dark stream. So, Case, maybe you know the answer to the puzzle. I think it's a checkmate in 1, so that's my hint. In fact, you can see it says black to move and win, easy. So that's a good indicator that it could be checkmate in 1. Of course, not a guarantee. So shout it out if you think you know, because I'm pretty sure I know what it is, and I'd like to share it with everyone. Right now, if I were not knowing the answer, I would start looking for forcing moves. So forcing moves always means checks, captures, threats. So I would look at all the checks, and in this position there's only one check, and I think it's all you need to see. Yeah, knight c2, that's right. Checkmate, so that was pretty easy. This is called Smothered Mate, so that's pretty cool. Alright, this one also pretty easy. My rating on here is 2408, it tells me. I'm not sure I'm going to perform like 2408 today, just because it's been a long day. But this one looks to me like mate in 2. My counting skills are known far and wide to be not amazing, so maybe it's not 2. I think it's exactly 2 though. What should it be? It's white to play, and again it's supposed to be an easy one. It says it's a 1506 rated puzzle. Of course, ratings are relative. Different websites, different ratings mean different things. But we're just warming up, so we might see some big puzzles later on. Thinking the same way as before, we would probably look only for checks at first. So I would see 2 different checks. One is on f7, rook takes f7 check, and the other is rook a8 check. So we just have to choose between the 2. See which one's better. Alright, so Case is saying we should check with the rook. I guess here, because that's the only way that we can make them block with the bishop. One interesting thing about the ChessBase tactics is each move has its own rating. I don't know if that's like better or worse, but I just find it interesting. Alright, nice. Easy back rank checkmate. Well, not exactly back rank, because the king is controlling a lot of the squares next to black's king. Okay. This one, it says it's tough. It says it's a 2130 rated puzzle, but I am confident that we can solve this. So white just took probably a pawn on e5. Can I go back and see? No. We have to look again for forcing moves. In this position, we don't have any checks, so we have to look for our captures, our threats, and take it from there. The most obvious move is bishop takes e5, which kind of makes me think that that's not the answer, since the puzzle is 2130. Because even if you just randomly guessed, that would be a very good random guess, right? About half of people would probably just randomly guess not to lose their bishop to the pawn. So probably it's something even more cunning and devious. And I think I know what it is. It's some kind of threat. Because I noticed that my queen on a5 and my rook on a6, they're aiming towards white's king in a very menacing way. It would be nice if we could clear the way somehow. So the move that I'm thinking of, it's not bishop e3. Welcome, Vedant. I don't know why I can't see myself, so I'm sorry about that, but we're solving some puzzles today. So feel free to shout out the answers. I really wish I wasn't late because I was trying to fix my camera, but you know what? I'm not a tech support person, so here we go. The puzzle's what's important, not my face, not my poofy hair, not the background of my kitchen, none of that. So, what do you think, Vedant? I was thinking something along the lines of bishop a4. That looks like a very tempting move. Yeah, Vedant agrees, so let's give it a whirl. Yep, so they took it, and now it's a 1200 puzzle. So I'm guessing we should just take that pawn as well. Okay, now this is a 2076 rated position. Yeah, no problem, Case. So we could take their bishop on c3 for free, or we could do something else. And it looks like it's a little bit of a subtle nuance, since people managed to get this position wrong. Can you believe it? We can't cut those people that we don't know any slack for getting this position wrong. How dare they? We have to just show them how it's done. So, Vedant says his ChessBase rating is 2250. Nice. So this one should be a piece of cake for Vedant then. Mine is 24 something right now. And to be honest, I haven't been on here since I made my last video about solving tactics on ChessBase. I think it's a nice resource for training, but I personally just choose to do different things these days. Alright, so how are we going to go after them now? What should it be? Right now I'm noticing that Mahir, yeah, I know you can't see my video. I can't see my video either. Sorry about that. But let's do the puzzle. I couldn't get it fixed. I tried for like several minutes. Here, let me try a couple other things. No. I'm gonna try just a couple random things, so please forgive me. Yeah, none of that worked. So I'm gonna just chill here, invisible in the dark. If you know how to get OBS to capture my video, I'll try it. Alright, now here, I see that they can take the bishop on c3, and they could play queen a2 check. They both look interesting. However, if you play queen a2 check, king c1, and then pawn takes c3, there's a difference that they can play king d1 and run to e2. So I think that the extra tempo that you give with queen a2 check is very useful to white. So it's better to take the bishop, which also threatens checkmate, because if we take the bishop, it controls the critical b2 square. So I think we should just take this bishop. And it was true. Nice. So we're going to checkmate them no matter what after this. That's why this is the answer. So that was a pretty good tactic, a little bishop sacrifice. And I'm a little surprised that the computer did not choose pawn takes d6. I thought that was maybe a more critical test, because then you have to answer what to do and play bishop takes b3, I believe. Or maybe it's just trivial, because we'll play like bishop back to c6 and queen a1 is coming. Anyway, I'm a little surprised, but let's move to the next puzzle. Okay, everyone. Black to move and win, and it's a 2384 puzzle. It says very difficult, but I'm sure that we will find it trivial and pedantic, and easy to solve. Alright, now it's black to play. If you choose white to play, your task might be more difficult. Let's see. If it was white to play, we would just probably make a queen. And then it would still be black to play and win. I'm kind of guessing. Actually, no. Maybe for white to play, you would like pin the knight or something. Okay, so white to play might be interesting too. But since black is the lucky dog who has to move, we're going to checkmate them probably. Because I see the king is stuck on a3. Now with the king on a3, on the edge of the board, unable to do anything at all, it's a sign, right? We should be able to finish them off. In fact, they're utterly paralyzed, so it tempts me to consider a knight maneuver instead of like the obvious move, which is knight b1 check. So what do you guys think? Should we go for knight b1 check, or should we go for some kind of maneuver with the knight from g6? I'm sorry, from b3. g6 and b3 are the same color in the same place, so I got them confused. Alright, so Vedant wants to give a check. So what did you calculate, Vedant, after king to a2? I think that after knight b1 check, king a2, if you move your other knight from b3, they will have the option to go on either dark colored square, king a1 or king a3. I think there's a checkmate here though, Vedanta. I don't think we should settle so easily for a draw. In fact, you should be suspicious because you could probably draw in multiple ways here, and most chess puzzles have just one answer. Alright, so if you play knight b1 check, king a2, knight c1, like I said, they could play king a3 or king a1 back. So do you have a checkmate for each one? I think the answer is no. So it's better to broaden your candidate moves. What other candidate moves could we consider here for a checkmate? Can't you see that the knight on c3 is trapping the king? So what if we move the other knight, the knight from b3? You need to sharpen your 2200 tactics. I think the answer could be knight to d2. Because if we play knight d2, and we let them do their smorgasbord and make their queen, then we could play knight to b1 mate. However, I also see the point of what you are saying to make a draw. It could be important to just draw. However, it says black to move and win in the diagram box. So you want to play knight c1 here? Okay, knight c1 also looks interesting. With the idea of playing next knight to b1. I think white can try to interfere with both of these moves. Because if you play, for example, let's say you play knight to c1, right? You want to play next knight to b1 check, and that would be checkmate. What if white plays rook to b6? Oh yeah, if you play, hold on. No, I don't think you told any move where rook c6 is such a big deal. Yeah, I guess it is, actually. I was thinking that it was more of a big deal if they play rook to b6, because then if you play knight to b1 check, they'll just take it and then promote to a queen. Because after king takes b1, g8 queen, their king is escaping. I thought that was more critical than rook c6. I thought knight d2 was really nice because it threatens checkmate in two ways. You can checkmate with knight c4, and you can checkmate with knight b1. So I'm really convinced this is the move. I haven't convinced you guys, it seems. But I'm gonna show you guys the error of your ways. Nothing personal. That's mate. And that's how you stay over 2400. Okay, now let's see. Even this mate in 1 was a 1992 rated puzzle. Pshaw. That's too crazy. Alright, now this one is 2362, but We don't see no ghosts, right? We've seen better puzzles than this. So let's solve this 2362 Chump Puzzle. Okay, so they just retreated their bishop. Their king's over there on b8. Our queen on f3 looks at squares near their king. That could be useful. Overall, their king looks a little bit drafty. They have some attack towards our king as well, but it doesn't seem like such a big deal. The knight on g4 is hanging, so if we could make them move the bishop from d7, we could also, in fact, win a piece. And by my estimation, I think it would matter a lot if we won that knight, since in this position we are already about material equal. You could say we're exactly material equal, but I'm not trying to be nitpicky here. I just think the pawn on d5 is a little bit weak, so I'm not counting it too much for my material count. Okay, so we have options for winning material. We have options for checkmating their king. I also think it would be really nice if we could put a knight on a6, if we could just fly it right there. Because if we played knight a6 and d6, that would be game over. So we have a couple neat ideas. So what do you guys think? So Vedanta's saying knight takes g5. That looks interesting. And I'm guessing that your idea is that if they play queen takes g5, you will play bishop takes f4 check, winning the game, right? I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd also like to point out that if they tried some sneaky shenanigans involving queen f6, threatening mate on b2, it would not work because we have a knight on d3, as long as the knight is there. They could try to chase it with c4, which would make complications. So maybe if we play knight takes g5, they will play c4 instead. That looks a little bit dangerous to me. For example, knight takes g5, c4, knight b4, queen f6. The knight is hanging on g5, but mate is hanging on b2. I guess it doesn't matter because we could always play bishop c3, which would attack the queen and the bishop. So I guess we're still not worried. Okay, so let's see. Is there any other source of counterplay? Is there anything that could go wrong with our move? For instance, let's say we play knight takes g5 and they want to cut off the fact that bishop takes f4 would be check. After knight takes g5, queen takes g5, bishop takes f4, we win. So if we play knight takes g5, knight e5, it would block the diagonal. And if we simply play like queen to d1 or something, queen takes g5, bishop takes f4 does not win the queen. So after knight g5, knight takes g5, knight e5, we would probably just take that knight on e5 with the knight from d3, because we would have rook and knight attacking that square. So it seems like knight e5 is not counterplay. I'm just wondering why this puzzle is 2362, because knight g5 looks very strong. Anybody see counterplay? Reasons knight g5 could be bad? Well, I think it's pretty good, and since this is a fake online rating, I am completely ready to lose my rating points. That was the answer. So props to Vedant, who called it in cold blood. He said that's the answer, and it was easy. This puzzle did not deserve to be 2362. Chump Puzzle. Alright, now this puzzle looks like something that could have happened in one of my own games. It looks so familiar because it's the opening. Let's see. There's a lot going on here. Black just castled, and whenever there's a bishop on d3 and a knight somewhere like e4, it makes you start to think about checkmate. because we could move the knight, for example, knight f6, and then go for total devastation with bishop h7 or something similar. Of course, it's not required that we do such desperate things. We could maybe just munch a free pawn on e5. Or we could trap the bishop on e7, because that bishop is very lacking in squares. That's an important thing to observe. If we play pawn d6 right now, in this day and age, what will they play? I am extremely sure that they will play either bishop takes d6, queen a5 check, or knight takes e4, because these are essentially the only forcing options, and it's a desperate position if you try to slowly maneuver your way out of this. So let's eliminate options one by one. If we play d6 and they play queen a5 check, and we play bishop to d2, they still have to mitigate this unfortunate circumstance of having a hanging bishop. Their queen's hanging too because of bishop to d2. So I would say queen a5 is easy to refute. We can throw it like garbage in the trash. We don't care about queen a5. Now, if they play bishop takes d6, the refutation for this one is very nice. I'd like to see if anybody can tell why bishop takes d6 is a bad move after pawn d6. It has to do with some of those factors that I mentioned. How when they castle, we have this strong bishop on d3. Teamwork makes the dream work, and when we can check their king whenever we want, it's very helpful. I'm going to do something silly right now. 1 second. Alright, I hope you guys like my new picture. I'm a chess ghost. Okay, I don't think anyone sees. So here's the reasoning. If they take, and we take, and they take back, we can check their king. And our queen springs to life, delivering destruction from above. And so that's an easy way to win a lot of material. That was a nice tactic. Let's do another one. Alright, this one's 1935, which was a good year. And I think we could probably win this pretty easily. It's just a matter of seeing your checks, which is almost always true, it seems. If you look at all of your checks and you don't pass judgment before you've analyzed them and you go slow, you will probably spot a great way to deal with this pin. The knight is under pressure. The rook is attacking the knight and queen. However, this is only a relative pin. It's like sitting on your uncle. Since it's relative, we can still move the knight, so we shouldn't rule it out. Any votes for what white ought to do? I say it's easy money. We only have to think about knight c5 and knight d8. Which one's better? There's a big difference between them. Modesem, welcome. Knight c5 check. And they make a weird little noise. And I don't know why I should choose queen takes e8 directly over queen b5, but I think that the engine will prefer for us to just take it in one shot. So that was nice. This is just a discover attack. A lot of the time a pin in reverse is a discover attack waiting to happen. So you need to find these opportunities. Can't just sit there feeling all sad for yourself because you got in a pin. Alright, now in this example, I am suspicious about the health of this rook and the king. Two bishops generally are very strong against a rook anyway. This one says white to move and win ridiculous. So I insist that we all ridicule this puzzle at the very end. Otherwise, it will not live up to its reputation. Now, the reason I am concerned for the health of black's king is it's directly in line with a white bishop. So, if we just move the pawn, it's a discover check. Even more powerful than discover attack. So the pawn could start moseying on down. And I think that this rook on h5 is also in suspicious health because it is very limited on movement. It can only presently go on the square h6. And this we could also change. Maybe we could attack that square or something different. What do you guys think? Vedant wants to push the pawn, okay. And what if black plays, oh, I don't know, a move like king b6? What would happen after that, Vedant? Or do we just push pawns, ask questions later? Is that how it works? Push the pawn and then trap the rook? Okay, but then what if we push the pawn, they play king b6. Well, maybe not king b6, but how about king c8? We play d6 check, they play king c8, and then if we play bishop g7, they will get one extra pawn compared to before. They can play pawn takes d5. Maybe it's not so bad. I think Modus M is right that we should play bishop g7 first. It just looks more clear. I'm not sure why pushing the pawn first is useful. I guess there's one thing to calculate. After bishop g7, they could start pushing the a pawn. The a pawn is a little menacing. Vedant, if the king is on c8, d7 does not promote, right? So let's see. If we play bishop g7, a3, and then like king g4, a2, they're about to promote. It's quite dangerous. And if we play c4 to stop the promotion, they will play rook h6, taking advantage. If we play bishop takes h6, they play a1 queen. Okay, now Vedant is saying d6 check, king c8, and then king to g4. But if we play king to g4, can they not just play rook takes e5, Mr. Vedant? I am highly suspicious of this option that you're saying. And this is a 1200 rated puzzle. Okay? So we're looking very deeply into this when it's secretly just a 1200 puzzle. We could actually get it wrong too. But you know what? I will honor Vedant. He is determined to tell about this discover check. So here we go. d6 check. But we will not play king g4 here because of rook takes e5. We have a better option. So see if you guys can spot the better move. I am 90% sure that I know exactly what it is. I think we're going to promote in style. That's what I think. So see if you guys can find a way of forcing through the promotion. Because if we promote first, like with d7, like what Vedant wants, then we don't have to worry so much about them playing a3, a2, a1. There's no way that they'll promote successfully when we have a queen on the board. Alright, Vedant, tell the moves. Hit us with it. What could it be? He says he found it. I think I found it too. Bishop f5. What if they play... I guess it doesn't matter if you play bishop f5. Because after rook takes f5 check, king takes f5. Actually, are you not going to get pantsed? They have a pawn running on the a file and a pawn running on the h file. So after bishop f5, rook takes f5, king takes f5, a3. Well, maybe first pawn takes d6, bishop takes d6. And then the move h3. Maybe king d7 first. I think you're running into some problems. Hello, Dinesh. Welcome. Here, I thought there was something even more cunning that white could play to make a queen. I didn't think we had to play bishop f5. And keep in mind, this is a 2300 level puzzle, so maybe bishop f5, the most obvious move, is not completely accurate. I think rook takes f5, king takes f5 is unnecessary counterplay. I mean, hey, I've been wrong before, but I was thinking bishop b7 check. What do you guys think about that? If bishop b7 check, king takes b7, d7, we are threatening promotion. They cannot play rook to h8 to prevent it because we could play bishop takes h8, and they're still miles away from promotion. After bishop b7 check, they could also play king d8 or king b8, but then we can play pawn takes c7 with check, and then promote next move. So if we play bishop b7 and king d7, this is probably the only challenge. Yeah, bishop b7 is where I'm going with this. And after king d7, I think that pawn takes c7 is still going to take the cake. So I'm willing to hazard my fake rating and play bishop b7. And it looks like it's true. They took the bait, and now we can see the point. This is a very common endgame motif where we deflect the king and then we advance our pawn, and they have one pawn in the way. How sad. The c7 pawn is just ruining all of their plans. And can you believe it? This is how the game ended, apparently. They can't play rook h8 again. Alright, so this was better than bishop f5. Mostly because I think there was counterplay involved with bishop f5. Bishop f5 might even win, but I think there were some problems with it. Alright, this one's 2249. Psh, that's the lowest puzzle we've seen in 10 minutes, so let's solve it. Their knight is hanging on d4. The pawn on c6 looks beefy. Very strong looking pawn. This pawn has rippling muscles because it's going to take on b7 with a double attack. Luckily, we attacked b7 with rook and bishop, so we could always take it in an emergency. And right now the position is material equal, it would appear. Maybe white has... No, I think it's just material equal. So, suggestions? Anyone? What should we do? Should we just take their knight? Is there any other counterplay? What can we do? So I guess if we take on d4, we can say I'm a piece up, come get me. And then they would take on b7, and we might play bishop takes b7, but they have too many supporters. Bishop takes b7 or rook takes b7, both look good. So Vedanta is suggesting an interesting move. He says b6 question mark. Because if you play b6, they cannot play c takes b7. And then they have rook hanging and knight hanging. So the only thing to check after a move like b6 is, do they have some kind of counter-punching move? Because if they make a simple play, like, for example, rook to d5, we would easily take the knight on d4 and enjoy our cake. Yes, I think b6 does win the match, so let's see. I was only checking out if they could play c7 or some cool move like that. But the answer is no, they cannot. And therefore we've solved this easy dubs puzzle. Very good. I don't know how this last position with just taking the free piece was a 2033 rated puzzle. That's insane. Okay. Apparently my rating is 2447 now. Maybe I was underrated 2400. Now this puzzle is 1897. That was the year that Capablanca was 9 years old and thrashing the guy, Cordoba, I believe, was the name of the Cuban champion at the time, who underestimated and then was completely pawned by his tiny tot rival, Capablanca, the strong guy with 5 names. All right, Vedant, what do you think it is in this position, since you got the last one right? Yeah, dab to your heart's content. Go right ahead. It's 1897, and Black's king is vulnerable. White's king also is vulnerable. They could play queen b1 with deadly dark design. So we have to look out a little bit for counterplay in this puzzle. So the best way to deny your opponent any chance to check you is to check them for days. So I think I see a sequence of moves where we clear the shelter of black's king with a sacrifice, with check, and then we bully their king until they go in the corner, and we deliver the goods with a rook. So anyone see what the first move should be? Maybe just guess the move, since I know typing whole variations in the chat is cumbersome. It's a lot easier to just dab when you say one move. I guess I could also put it as a decision between two options. We could take on b6 with the rook or the bishop. We should not take with the queen, because the queen is doing a great job of controlling all the spaces around black's king. So, Modesem, I think you are on the right track. We should take with the rook. Now, even apparently at 1200, we'll find queen takes b6. Now, here's the part where we have to be precise. How do we continue the attack? Frankly, not a lot of precision is needed, but still, it's good to not take any risks. Make sure you get it right. Black would really like to play king d7, I think. Although it also looks hideous. Maybe they're not really escaping. Yeah, Vedanta is correct. It would lose, well, maybe not lose, but you would lose the thread because it's not check. We would lose our opportunity. I think we're actually okay after king a3 and king b4 if they start bullying us. But I only looked at it briefly because I saw rook b6. Alright, now to stop king d7, we should play queen c6. And this is the part where we do that world-famous ladder checkmate. I like to call it lawnmower checkmate because it looks like the heavy pieces like the queen and the rook, they're controlling big sections of the lawn. And that's mate. We're going to chase the king down with our lawnmowers. It's going to be a glorious finish. It's going to be rated PG-13 because of the lawnmower scene. Okay, now this one, Modesem says queen c6. Right off the bat, threaten mate. But is it that simple? Because the puzzle is rated 1876, and after queen c6, oh no, he was telling queen c6 in the last position. But queen c6 is interesting in this game as well, because after queen c6 we threaten checkmate. They would have to play f3 or rook e4 in order to avoid complete and utter destruction. Queen takes a8 is out of the question. They would get a losing position. So these are their options. I guess they could also run for the hills with like king f1, but I think queen takes g2, king e2, it's not a critical line. So let's stick to analyzing f3 and rook e4. So after queen c6, let's say they play f3. How do we play? Anyone? Bueller? f3 would block our bishop and queen. But the move f3 also weakens white's king. They would become vulnerable to an attack on the dark squares. So what would that attacking move be? If we play queen c6, f3, the diagonal g1 to a7 becomes open, and Vedant says just take the pawn. But after you take the pawn, what if they just play rook b1? I don't think that you are so simply winning. After all, coming into this position, we are down a pawn. So if we only recover a pawn, we are still allowing counterplay from white. You're missing a very basic tactic, Vedant. At least I think so. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I am missing a basic tactic. I was thinking queen c6, f3, and then queen 2, b6. But after that, they could play knight to d4. So it's possible that you're correct, Vedant, that we should just take the pawn. But then we need to see a little bit more because we are only getting a pawn back. So after queen c6, f3, queen takes c3. We attack the rook, we attack the knight. They can only play the move rook to b1. Queen b6. Actually, queen b6, knight d4, e5. No, that would allow... Actually, yeah, I think it wins. So let's play queen c6 because we're seeing multiple good options now. Once you see multiple good options, you don't have to see more. Sadly, by the way, Vidun, you don't have to retract your message. It's good for everyone to be able to see what you were thinking. So after queen c6, f3, I think queen b6 does actually win a piece because after f3, queen b6, knight d4, e5. Actually, no, I was not visualizing properly. I thought after rook takes e5, we could play queen b1, and I got excited. I thought it was checkmate, but they could play this move, and it's not quite checkmate, but the game keeps going. So probably the reason that the puzzle stopped here is that we have multiple good moves. Maybe queen b6 is fine, as well as queen takes c3. Another thing that came to my mind is that after rook b1, we can take a second pawn with tempo. So that's still pretty great. I think this position was a little complicated just to give more moves. Okay, black to move and win is 22-26. That's too bad because if it was just 4 points lower, it could have been 4 twos. What a shame. Let's knock it down to size so it can be a proper, completely 2 number. Now, this is a rook endgame. Rook endgames are notorious for their complexity and intrigue, and all the interesting, cool things that can happen in rook endgames. I personally lose a lot of endgames that have 4 rooks, but with 2 rooks, usually I do just fine. It's tricky here, because we have a strong pawn on a3, but rook pawns have some drawish tendencies, so if we liquidate too readily, it's quite likely that we will botch the whole operation. Now, a common thing to do in such positions is push the pawn and then make them put their king out in the open where we can check that king. And then we move the rook with check, clearing the a1 square. And since it would be check, they wouldn't have time to play rook takes a2, and then we play a1 and make a queen with winning advantage. But in this position, White's king is not in the open. Pesky, isn't it? So we could maybe force their king into the open or find some alternative resource. However, I think that the prominence of the pawn on a3 is an extremely important detail. Just because it's good doesn't mean we should push it, however. One option in many positions is to put the king in front of the pawn so that the king is sheltered by the pawn, free the rook, and then advance pawn and king together. Dinesh is suggesting d5. However, I'm suspicious. If you play d5 and they play rook a6 check, you might be running into some difficulties after, for example, king to e7 and pawn takes d5. I don't think it's clear that you're winning in that position, and white now has a passed pawn. g5 is a check. We should always see our checks. So I'm somewhat tempted to begin looking at g5. However, I think a2 would come before g5. So to aid my calculation here, I would say I don't know what I'm going to play on move 1, and then I would just examine how the position changes after various moves. So looking at g5 check, I can see that they have only one option. And the reason they have only one option is if they play king e3, we could play rook e1 check, and that's very useful as we know. Because if we could play a2 on move 1, see, we said we were not sure what move 1 would be. If it was a2 and then g5, they could not play king e3 because rook e1 check, king d2, a1 queen promotes and wins. So g5 is a very nice resource. However, they could play pawn takes g5. Now, after pawn takes g5, we could play pawn takes g5 check back, and then they could only play king takes g5 again. And here, I've spotted a very nice resource, a way to expose their king by force. And since I've calculated all this, and I'm fairly confident that it's right, I will risk my fake rating and play a2. That was correct. So now I'd like you guys to try to find the way to expose their king. They played rook a8 check. I'm sorry, rook a8 hoping to play check. Maybe rook e8. But of course, if they play rook e8, they will no longer be babysitting the violent a2 pawn. So I'm not worried about that. Arish Tippa, welcome. Yeah, a2 first, absolutely. Now, how do we get white to put their king in the open? That's the question. If we can get their king to come out somewhere to play, we can give them a check and then promote. So I will suggest g5 because it's obvious that there's no good rook move. It can only be this move. Now, they've taken. We should probably just take with a check, right, everyone? So this is the critical position. And I just played a couple of moves to make the calculation easier. What do you guys think we can do to make white expose their king? I've even seen this motif in a nice study. It's one of the examples in the night level endgame studies course segment at Chess Kings and Queens. And who made that lesson? Me. So I guess it doesn't really make sense for me to say I saw it in my lesson that I created. I must have seen it somewhere else. All right, Arush is on the right track. h4. Now they must take it. And then this is the easy dubs moment where we give them a check. The computer says solved. And we high-five ourselves because if they make any move like king g5, we make a queen. Oh, it didn't give me any option to make a rook or something. That's too bad. All right, let's go here. Black to move and win. Supposedly it's challenging, but this puzzle is only 2079. So I'm sure that we're going to destroy it in short measure. And I think this position looks a lot like the other one in one respect. That if we can get a pawn rolling down the board, the knight on a5 will have a very hard time preventing anything from happening. It's going to be too far away. So, what shall we play in this position? By the way, if there's some delay, I'm sorry. I'm like kind of new to this YouTube thing, and it's not always being well behaved. That's why I'm a chess ghost today. Modasem, good question. I am using tactics.chessbase.com. It's the tactics feature for the ChessBase website. They don't have an in-program tactics feature, which is just too bad, because I would probably use it somewhat frequently since I always have ChessBase open on my computer. Well, not always. Clearly, when I'm playing a serious online chess game, I don't have ChessBase open, but you get my point. It would be nice to have it on desktop. Anyway, it's a knight endgame, and knight endgames are notoriously drawish. One way that you can look at knight endgames as if they were king and pawn endgames. A lot of the same motifs come through. Now, Vedant says he would do knight g1, which is double attacking two pawns. And I'm guessing that if you play knight g1, they would play something like knight c6. And Vedant, which pawn would you take, h3 or f3? I think that after knight c6, they have two interesting options. They could play knight d4, or they could play knight takes b4. If you play knight takes f3, and they play knight d4 check, that's a double attack on your knight on f3, and your king on e6. And after knight takes d4, only move, king takes d4. It's beginning to look a lot like counterplay. However, could still be winning, so might be interesting. Yeah, so Vedant wants to play knight takes h3, as I suspected. So after knight g1, if they play knight c6 and you play knight takes h3, I think your winning chances are quite high. For example, knight takes b4, knight g1, we are sealing off the approach of the king somewhat, since they have to play king d2 a slightly longer path to reach. And then we play h4, h3, h2, just in time to make a queen. However, if you play knight to g1, what if they play h4 and double your pawns? It could be a little bit pesky. So I'm curious to see if there's some move that's slightly better than knight g1. Otherwise, knight g1 is quite compelling. It's hard to argue with winning the h-pawn and winning the game. I think it's knight g1. And that's the answer. So congrats, Vedant. Again, he called the answer in cold blood. This one's 2,000 on the dot. That was a good year. Not that any of you guys would know. Now, what do we do? Black to move and win, supposedly challenging. But today we haven't gotten a single puzzle wrong. We have destroyed every single puzzle that has crossed our path. And we will not stop here for a puzzle that has 3 zeros in it. Not today. Just evaluating the position, we can see that we are down 1 pawn slightly. We have opposite colored bishops, and the rooks are ready to roll. So we have some options. We could maybe take a second, well, we could take our pawn back by playing g takes h4, or we could take our pawn back with rook takes h4, but neither of those moves are so compelling to me. I think we should play something a little more, a move with some je ne sais quoi. You know, we shouldn't just play this pedestrian type move. Maybe f4 check, and Vedant is on the warpath. If we play f4 check, there's already mate in sight. If they play king to g4, we can play rook takes h4 and win the internet, the whole thing. Now, if we play f4 and they play, for example, king h3 or king h2, probably king h2 is more reasonable, we would play rook takes h4 check, king g1, and rook h1 checkmate. So after f4, what's the best move? It has to be bishop takes f4. So we would take probably with the pawn, and it would be check, and they would take no doubt with the rook. So we just have to evaluate this position. Are we really winning? We get a bishop for 3 pawns total. Is it worth it? I'm not 100% sold, although I think I would play it like in an instant in blitz. I'd say, hey, thanks for the bishop, I'll beat you later. But maybe there's an in-between move. Like we play f4, they play bishop takes f4, and then we do something different. Probably it's not that challenging. Let's just play f4. Alright, this position's actually 2206. Alright, Irish is suggesting rook takes h4 is superior, and I am with him. I'm glad you spotted that, because, as he's mentioned, we are threatening, I guess I should say we're threatening not just mate, but we're also threatening to take the bishop for free. And if they try some shenanigans like bishop takes g5, not only could we play king takes g5, we could also play rook takes b4. So let's go for the kill, and that's a good solution. So props to Arush, coming in clutch with the good suggestion. All right, 21-23 is the rating of this puzzle, and I think this puzzle looks a little bit weak. This puzzle needs some milk. Let's see if we can just beat it right here. Oh yeah, I forgot that Vedant and Arush were contemporaries. Vedant moved away long ago, and I've seen him at tournaments. But here he is on the internet. How great is that? By the way, Arush, you might not know this, but I am retiring from Kings and Queens. So, you were my first student, I believe. My first private student. And it was a good time way back then. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. I will be moving on to do different things in my life. Yeah, Vedant called it easy all caps, take the knight. Because if they take back, we do a little back rank magic. This puzzle is rated 996. This is the first 3-digit puzzle we've seen, so I really hope we don't mess this up. There we go. That's the end. Now, this puzzle looks quite similar to the last puzzle, if you ask me. So I'm not even going to worry your head about it. There we go. That was too easy. Shield your eyes, kids. All right, there we go. This one's 2130. This is more hour speed. Yes, Mo here. I'm retiring. I'm going to be starting a PhD, and that's a full-time thing to do. So I will not be teaching chess at Kings and Queens, but we can all keep in touch via YouTube and Light Chess. If you don't have my Light Chess, actually I think everyone here has my Light Chess, but you can just check out the description for my YouTube channel, and the link is there somewhere. Yeah, Arush, I'm hoping to still play tournaments, but with the coronavirus going on like this, it's not looking very likely. That's actually somewhat of a factor in my decision. Not all of my decision, but it's pretty major. Vedant says knight to d3, attacking e5 more, attacking f4 more, attacking the bishop. But what will they do? After knight d3, what could black play? Do they have any useful moves? For example, let's say they play rook to f8. Is it just a simple win? Knight takes c5, knight takes c5, and then queen takes e5 check? Could it be? We are currently equal material. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's a really phenomenally better move here. And that's a wrap. If they play something different, we're going to play knight takes f4 probably, forking queen and rook because of the pin. Well, actually, no, that's not true. The rook is guarding the queen. So after a move like bishop d4, I guess we'll just take everything and then take on f4 at the end. We got options. Anyway, sometimes you don't have to calculate everything. When am I retiring? No, Mahir, I'm retiring in like 10 days. Not even. I'm leaving on the 25th. That's my last day. Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Sometimes I'm suggesting some not very good defending moves just to see if we missed anything. So please forgive me. Now this position. It says it's black to move in when difficult. I think it's black to move in when easy. Vedant, what is my rating? Do you mean my tactics rating right now? My tactics rating here on ChessBase.com is 2468. I've gained almost 100 points since we started, so that's pretty cool. My real life rating is a little bit lower right now, but I think after the coronavirus is over, I'm going to come out swinging and I'm going to gain 300 points. Yeah, KJ is the resident guy who's good at counting, and he said that's 16 days away. So thanks for the assist on the counting, KJ. Now in this position, I see that the bishop on b2 is kind of hanging. The bishop on e2 is kind of hanging. The f-pawn is pinned. g2 is tender. There are lots of issues here, potentially, for white. So, how do we take advantage? Will we capitalize, or will we just suffer in this position as black? Our knight is also hanging, so it's important not to do anything that your parents would advise you not to. KJ, I have no doubt that you solved it. Tell us all the moves. I'm ready to hear it. Or at least tell me the first two moves. I think once you tell the first two moves, everyone will see the light. Bishop takes, queen takes, and what's the next move, KJ? It's got to be bishop takes, queen takes, and this is a 2309 position apparently. I think it's pretty easy. And then queen d4. There's nothing to take except ghosts, but I think this is 100% accurate, because if they take on d4, we play not pawn takes, but knight takes e2. So, great job, KJ. KJ is on a fast track to play in the bishop level very soon. All right, this one says it's 2340. I think this position is trivial, and I'm sure you guys can solve it easily. We're going to wreck this puzzle, and there's nothing they can do about it. All right, any suggestions? They don't even have a check on us. They only have rook to c6, which is not a very effective check. So I think it will not be so hard. It says it's 2340. I almost can't believe it. When are we going to get like one of those 2800 puzzles here? We've been on a streak for like almost an hour now. Starting from the time when my video didn't work and I was late. Alright, Vedant wants bishop d5. But Vedant, what if they play... Actually, maybe it's not so bad to play bishop d5. I thought it was counterplay though, because after bishop d5, they could at least sacrifice a rook for it or something. I think we have mate. I think bishop d5 gets us like a good position, because if bishop d5, bishop takes d5, pawn takes d5, we're threatening rook takes a2 very strongly, and I don't see any good way to stop it. However, I think bishop to b1 is more precise, because if we play bishop to b1, we are threatening rook takes a2, mate, because bishop takes a2, rook takes a2 is the same. So is there any way that they could stop that? Motosem wants to play rook takes a2 in one shot, but what if the bishop takes it? Or maybe he's just telling the threat. I think it's bishop b1. And the only reason that this puzzle is hard is because people like Vedant see bishop d5 and they get excited because it's also better. But it's kind of annoying. It's kind of annoying when the puzzle is like that, where there's like a good move and then there's a slightly better move. But still, I guess at some point you have to start calculating like that. Why not? All right, black to move and win. Master level, it says. Well, we're all masters here. We're going to wreck this 2432 puzzle. I have no doubts in my mind. They are bullying our queen with bishop d1. They are bullying our rook as well, I'd just like to mention. That rook didn't do anything. I don't know why it's being such a bully. What else is interesting about this position? Pawn on c5 is kind of hanging, but doesn't seem so relevant. Alright, Vedant says bishop d5 is bad. Okay. I think it's okay. I mean, I only really analyzed bishop b1. That's why I said that the puzzle was trivial. It was the first move that I saw. Sometimes I try to make an argument for the other side. Sometimes in a practical game, like, different things will happen from what we expect. Alright, so, any suggestions here? Apparently this is a master level puzzle, so this is everyone's chance to wreck a 2432 puzzle. I see that h2 is a weakness. Okay, I think Vedant sees a draw after bishop d5 in the last puzzle. That's interesting. I'm not shocked, actually, because black's king is somewhat weak. d3 is also a tender moment. So I think that's kind of good to notice. It's also relevant to notice that we are up a piece. By the way, everyone's USCF rating is going to be like kind of out of whack because we're not playing any real tournaments. So I don't think you guys should stress about your rating during this time. It's mostly important to train. Okay, what are we going to do? We're up a piece. I guess our f6 pawn is also kind of hanging. That might be important to notice too. We could have a weak back rank. Just have to look out for that. Vedant says queen to a5. We also have queen to a6 as a possibility. I don't see any forcing options either. So I think this is like a pure defending puzzle. The thing is, if you play queen to a5 and they play queen takes a5 and you play knight takes a5, they will play probably bishop takes d4, and then we are down in exchange. So I have some suspicion about this. Not that there's anything wrong with being down a rook. I've played many games down a rook. But I just think we should give ourselves a better chance. Have we met our match? Is this the final puzzle? KJ, as usual, is confusion. Yes. The very embodiment of confusion. So I think I'll frame this puzzle in a certain way, okay? We have nothing to do to rescue both pieces at once. There's no way to save both the rook and the queen. So what we want to do is get as much as we can for one of those two pieces. Now, I don't think there's any good way to get compensation for the queen, because queen takes d1 is illogical. It gives them some initiative by developing the rook, and we lose a lot of material. If we play a move like rook d8 after that, they would play queen takes f6. Not good. So we need to rescue the queen, but we want to get compensation for the rook. So queen a5 we've already ruled out with Vedant's variation. So it was very good that he pointed out that queen a5 could be a mistake. So what other move could it be? We can only consider the moves queen a6 and queen b5, because moves like rook c4 or queen b4, they're too desperate. Those end up a piece in a different way. So let's calculate queen b5. Bishop takes d4. What do you guys think should happen next? Any suggestions? Queen b5, bishop takes d4. Vedant seems to like queen a6 instead, but I picked out queen b5 for a reason. So see if you guys can figure out why I'm suggesting queen b5. Yeah, queen a6 doesn't really do much, because after bishop d5, you're not threatening rook d3 anymore. Hello? Melee, please. Our esteemed guest, who has played many a Kings and Queens tournament now. So some of you guys might even have met our friend Melee, please. So we were just talking about this position, Mr. Melee, and supposedly this is black to move and win. And I think I've already seen the answer, but I'm happy to hear from anyone in the chat what the answer could be. All right, so Vedant knows the answer. Very good. I'm pretty sure this is true, what he said. Queen b5, solved. Because if they take, we take back. And we have 3 minor pieces against 1. So that means we have 2 minor pieces against a rook. And their rooks are very passive, so this is good for black. And if they take, we play bishop c5, winning the queen. So, good looks, everyone. We solved this master level puzzle. Easy dubs. All right, cool. This one is 2297. It's about to be 22 not 97, because we're going to solve this one. I guarantee it. We are down a queen, by all appearances, a queen against 1 light square bishop. But our attack is fierce and fickle. So, how do we save the day in this position? I think I know the answer, but I don't want to be a spoil sport, so let's see what you guys can come up with. I'm going to get water for 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, squad, what have we got? So Vedant says bishop f5. Attacking the defender of the c-pawn, who is quite pinned. Now, I didn't think about bishop f5 so much, but it looks pretty reasonable. The thing is, we're down a queen, right? So let's say you play bishop f5, and black plays, oh, I don't know, a move like queen e2. Let's just pretend they're going to play queen e2. You take the rook on c8, right? Black plays d3, threatening. Queen takes b2. Yeah, bishop f5, it could maybe lead to a draw, but I feel very suspicious. I think black's actually winning after bishop f5. Now, Melee Please is suggesting d6. KJ is suggesting d6. Vedant also suggesting d6. So let's back it up. Obviously, c takes d6 is losing to rook takes c8. And what if we play a move like, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, guys. I know the move's d6. I just want to see if there's any resistance. d6 and queen f6. Let's say that we play d6 and they play queen f6. What do you do? I guess it's maybe too easy. I can't believe the computer did that. That was silly. So I was saying queen f6, what do you do? I guess it really is trivial because even the computer didn't want to play this line. I was thinking that we could play not bishop to e5. I thought this move first because they're smothered, right? And then we take this. And since we don't even have to move the light square bishop, it's gonna be mate next move no matter what. Well, not no matter what. I guess they could play like a6 or something, but it's terrible. All right, let's move on. That was a good puzzle. This one is supposedly master level. Let's show that it's chump level. Black to move and win. Yeah, maybe I missed a drawing resource in the other one. Alright, so rook b6 is menacing our bishop on c6. Our king is looking also a little bit peckish, so there's rook b8 in the air. They might want to take our bishop on g7 since it's a vital defender of the king, and that would open their bishop's line, but we could also take their bishop. This position's very complicated. What do you guys think? Vedant says rook a1, sharp eye Vedant. So KJ, I believe, fell for a trap. He said queen c5, winning the rook, but knights can go backwards, KJ. I think rook a1 is very strong. So let's just, for sake of argument, say they play the move rook to b8. Check. What's the best way of defending our king after rook to b8? Anyone? Melee Please says queen a7. We'll come to that. I just want to help these guys through rook a1 first. But now that you've said queen a7, they'll probably all jump on it. Now, if you play rook a1, the idea is that after queen takes a1, they'll play knight f3, check, and bishop takes a1. But they're going to get a lot of pieces for the queen. So after rook a1, rook b8 check, bishop e8, queen takes a1, knight f3, check, bishop takes f3, bishop takes a1. White has a ton of play for the queen, and that was my point. So I think that it makes the most sense to play queen a7, like what Melee Please has mentioned. After queen a7, we are pinning the rook to the king. So they have very few options. In fact, they cannot even give a check. They also don't have the option of queen f7 since we're guarding that with the knight and the queen. So they're not really going to attack our g7 square so much. And if they play c5, the most maybe logical move to play, we would play rook a1. Another really great resource after queen a7 is if they play queen f2, we play rook a1 check, king g2, rook a2. I'm fairly confident this is the best move, and it is. Great. And shout out to Melee Please, who spotted it. We had lots of different good-looking moves, but this one is best. Alright, 1923. They're feeding us a low one. Melee Please is a good player. I don't think that he has a lot of chances to play tournaments, though. Correct me if I'm wrong, Melee. Especially these days. I'm not even bothering to play. It's just not going to happen until I have a vaccine. I care about my parents too much to go for that. Now this one's just a mate in one, I think. So I don't know how interesting this puzzle really is. ChessBase is professing that it's black to move and win interesting, but I think it's mate in one, unless I'm going blind after all this time. That's mate. Okay. I'm glad I'm not crazy and it was actually mate. Okay, guys. So there's a queen on e6. The rooks look a little busy with that pawn on f3. Material is equal. Yeah, I think that Melee Please and I are in a somewhat similar situation. We really can't take any risks to go play chess because of the zeitgeist, the situation in which we find ourselves. So, we're going to leave it up to you kids to go play chess. At least for a couple of years, probably. Yeah, Vedanta's 1300, but his solving is good. Rook e8, and if they play queen takes f7, we play rook takes e1 check in between. So I'm assuming that Vedant wants rook c e8. Any other votes? Alright, KJ wants rook f e8. I think rook f e8 is a little brash, because after queen f7, rook takes e1 check. It's not mate, since they have the move bishop to c1. I would say that you would be close to correct if we had a dark square bishop on, say, g5, but that's not the case. Uh-oh. Sounds like Vedanta is stuck inside for a different kind of reason. Alright, this is 2508. This is the highest puzzle we've seen so far. And I think this should be our last puzzle since I have to go sleep because of teaching at camp in the morning. I don't want to be brain dead for my campers. No offense to anyone who's brain dead. Now, white to move and win, it says it's a nightmare. I don't have a feeling that I'm going to have any nightmares about this puzzle. I think I'm going to just sleep quite easily after we solve it. So, what do we think? Black king, maybe a vulnerable position. Black pieces not developed, quite sleepy. Looks like attacking time. The queen on d4, vulnerable to attack. You could almost say trapped. Because a move like rook h d1 would force them to play only queen to b4 or queen to a4. Vedanta's onto something. He says we should play queen b5 or rook c4. Unfortunately, in chess, you cannot play or moves. He said also bishop f2. Yeah, there are lots of very good resources here. I agree. But it doesn't mean we should start with any of them. Yeah, first move that comes to mind is rook h d1, at which point they would likely respond with queen a4. The reason I chose queen a4 is that they could come back to e8 at least, if you bully them more. So, I don't actually know the answer to this off the top of my head, so I'm going to do some quiet reflection for a moment. But if you guys suggest anything in the chat, I will definitely respond. Yeah, there are too many good moves. I agree. The first move that came to my mind was c6. Actually, even before rook hd1. Alright, so Vedant is onto something. If you play rook c4, they can only play moves on the d file. In fact, they can only play rook d7, I'm sorry, queen d7 and queen d8. So let's say that they play queen d8. We could play rook d1. They would play queen e8. And then their queen is quite out of play. Looks pretty good. If they play queen to d7, they have the extra option of playing queen e6 if we play rook d1. But in that position, we might play something such as c6 with tempo, forcing them to get an open king. Not a guarantee of success, but certainly a fair indicator. So, do you guys see any problem with the move just pawn c6 in the first place? If black plays b6, we play queen a6 and win the game. We take the cake, as they say. So, if we play c6, they will either develop a piece or play queen b6. Probably it's not that strong. It's hard to say because I guess the problem with c6 right away is that they will eventually get queen b6 in. Like we play c6, knight h6, for example, ridiculous move. Queen b5, and then they play queen b6, which would ruin our plans. Even if we played pawn takes b7, king takes b7, queen b5 check, they would play queen b6. And it seems like that is sort of ruining everything. Although I still believe white's position is quite good, because the opening of the c-file should be some kind of strategic advantage. Since this puzzle is 2508, I don't want to play fast. I want to make sure that we get it. We can't let it get away. We also have knight f5 and knight f3. These moves have gone unmentioned so far. Okay, so the move rook hd1 forces queen b4 or queen to a4, right? So it's interesting to see what happens if we play rook hd1 and then c6. For example, rook hd1, queen a4, intending queen e8, and then we play c6. After c6, b takes c6, we stand a fair chance of trapping their queen with some cunning tactics. For example, rook 2, c4. If they play queen a6, we play rook b4 check, winning the queen. However, I believe this is not forced, because if we play rook hd1, queen a4, c6, they could just play a move like queen a6. It's not really any big deal for them to get doubled pawns. Yeah, I think rook c4 and then c6 is our main try right now. If we play rook c4, queen d8, c6, they could play a move like b6, but it's just a disaster waiting to happen. For example, rook a4 should be winning on the spot at that point. Alright, let's try rook c4. I know you guys are pressuring me. I wanted to think about it a little more just to make sure we don't miss it, but that was the best move. Now here they played queen d7. I wonder why the computer chose queen d7, because I thought queen d8 was just better. They could be equivalent, but the move that I thought of here was c6. And since you guys agree, I think we will play that move. And we solved the puzzle. See, that was easy. 2500 puzzle. The first move was 2508, and we sliced it. In fact, it was practically the first thing that we looked at. Anyway, I think I have to go to sleep now, just to be a responsible adult. It's been really great solving these puzzles with you guys. We got none of them wrong, and we gained over 100 points. And if you guys thought you were not good at tactics, well, think again. You guys are great at tactics. I'm going to sign out now. It's been real, everyone. And feel free to come back another time when my camera is working, and we will do other things, other chess things. Maybe variants, maybe playing the viewers.